So pretty interesting discussion on localized bladder cancer. But eventually, Chandrakant was just typing that nearly 50% of patients eventually metastasize. And in metastatic setting, no discussion can be over now without immunotherapy, which is the new, treatment option that we are having now in urothelial cancers also. So, good evening, everyone. I hope I'm well audible, and so I'll begin with the discussion. So, we have had quite an evolution of systemic therapy options for bladder cancer. In the early 1970s, we had the BCG coming in, which was the first sort of drug that was useful, an earliest form of immunotherapy that we have known. And after that, we didn't have much sort of immunotherapeutic agent. We had the MVAC coming in the 90s, and the taxanes being known to be approved as well as active agents in the metastatic setting. And then we had the gemcitabine being approved, and then finally in the early 2000s we had the gemcitabine cisplatin and the high dose MVAC being there, and then there was a dose dense MVAC that came in, and there was a continuous sort of fight between MVAC and GemCis. And slowly and slowly, the European as well as the American centers mostly have taken up gemcitabine cisplatin when the trial came that they have equal efficacy with a lesser toxicity with gemcitabine cisplatin. In the second line setting, we had the vinflunin coming in the late 2000s, and now in the last few years, last 5 years, we have the immunotherapeutic agents coming in, with starting with the first data from atezolizumab, followed by durvalumab, avelumab, nivolumab, and pembrolizumab. All of them sort of now having earlier breakthrough approvals and now having the full approvals in both the EMA as well as FDA. And we also have now the FGFR inhibitor being approved by FDA last year, being called ardafitinib. Uh, so this is how the landscape of systemic therapy in bladder cancer is, and we can see how numerous immunotherapeutic agents are now approved. Pembrolizumab approved in second line setting once the disease has progressed post platinum based chemotherapy, or within 12 months of neoadjuvant or adjuvant platinum based chemotherapy, or it can also be used in first line setting when patients are ineligible for cisplatin based chemotherapy. And similarly, the indication is there for atezolizumab as well as nivolumab as well as avelumab and durvalumab. So avelumab, durvalumab mostly now is being approved in the second line setting, and avelumab being a very unique molecule being approved only in the maintenance setting. Now, this is the recent NCCN guidelines, and what they say is that for cisplatin eligible patients, the preferred regimen is cisplatin based chemotherapy, either dose dense MVAC or gemcitabine cisplatin. Both can be followed up by avelumab maintenance, for which we have now a category 1 recommendation. And for cisplatin ineligible patient, for them also we can use a carboplatin based regimen with gemcitabine followed by avelumab maintenance, which is a category 1 recommendation. And if the patients are not feasible for any platinum based chemotherapy, that is, even if the carboplatin is not feasible, then we can go to single agent immunotherapy, or we can go to single agent immunotherapy if these patients are expressing PDL1. So in first line setting, immunotherapy is approved in cisplatin ineligible if we cannot use chemotherapy for them, carboplatin based chemotherapy with them, or if the PDL1 is present. In the second line, we have a category 1 recommendation for pembrolizumab, and we also have altered preferred regimens of other drugs, that is nivolumab, durvalumab, atezolizumab, avelumab, as well as the FGFR inhibitor ardafitinib. And then there are other regimens like paclitaxel, docetaxel, or single agent gemcitabine, and sometimes ifosfamide, pemetrexed, and doxorubicin. These are sometimes rarely used nowadays. So we'll concentrate on immunotherapy and concentrate on the maintenance first line option that we have now. So maintenance therapy is something that is found useful in many of the sensitive chemotherapy sensitive cancers. We have maintenance being approved in breast cancers, commonly used maintenance nowadays used with GI cancers, with colon cancers, with ovarian cancer, and now the bladder cancer is not far behind. So we know that it is a good chemosensitive tumor with response rates reaching up to 60 to 70% with first line platinum based treatment, which remains the standard of care. And but using just platinum based chemotherapy, the median OS is 14 to 15 months with cisplatin, and with carboplatin it drops to 8 to 9 months. So what we have seen is that typically there is no benefit of continuing the platinum beyond 6 cycles, whereby there is more cumulative toxicity and there is not much benefit. So beyond 6 months, what the usual way is to observe these patients, and on observation what is there is that there are many patients who present in a progression state with a very bad PS and are not being eligible for any second line treatment. So if you are using maintenance treatment, then we are able to keep these patients also into our follow up and extend the progression free survival of these patients once they have responded. Again, why immunotherapy? So urinary bladder tumors are highly immunogenic, and maintenance therapy with a IO agent is certainly will be useful in extending the clinical benefits that have been achieved with chemotherapy. It will prime the tumor cells and deplete the immunosuppressive cells, so that there is an enhanced anti-tumor activity and less cumulative toxicity, and will delay the subsequent need of any alternative therapy. And we all know that immunotherapy is something that is really active in patients who have a good PS, in patients who have a low tumor burden. And that is why once we have completed the initial chemotherapy and have attained the maximum response, this is the time when probably immunotherapy might be acting the best. Also, if you are challenging the patients with immunotherapy early, you are knowing that whether they are responding to IO or not, so that when they are progressing on second line, then these patients are excluded and you have attained the maximum benefit with them. So as I just said, that there are two options with immunotherapy maintenance. One is once you have completed with the first line chemotherapy and then you switch to an IO maintenance, and another option is a first line chemo IO combination, and then you switch to an IO, continue with the IO maintenance and stop the chemotherapy at 6 cycles. So the later approach is something that is coming up but yet not approved by the guidelines as to start combination chemo IO. But this is something that may also come up in the future. Now, talking with the Javelin Bladder 100 study. So this is the study that established avelumab as the standard of care. So this trial selected all the unresectable locally advanced or metastatic urothelial cancers with stage 4 disease who have received first line standard platinum based chemotherapy 4 to 6 cycles, and after this they were either in CR, PR or stable disease, that is non-progressive patients. 700 such patients were included, and they were included within 4 to 10 weeks of completing their last chemotherapy. They were stratified 1:1 is to avelumab versus the best supportive care alone, that is the placebo arm, and they had included both PD-L1 positive as well as the negative patients. The patients were stratified as per what was the response to the first line induction, whether they were CR or PR versus stable disease, and whether they were having visceral or non-visceral metastasis. The primary endpoint was overall survival. These are the baseline characteristics. So patients were mostly 60 to 70 years of age. 90% were having PS 0 to 1. Around 50% were PD-L1 positive. 55% around patients has visceral metastasis. More than 50% patients, 52% around, received cisplatin based chemotherapy, and responded patients were almost 70% patients who had either attained a CR or a PR, whereas there were around 30% patients who were having stable disease. So these are the results, and we can see that the primary endpoint, that is overall survival in the entire intention to treat population, was met. it was almost a 7 months gain in the median overall survival, with the avelumab maintenance arm having median OS of 21 months versus 14 months. So we have gained almost 14 months of the median OS, which is a very significant gain with a significant hazard of 0.69. These are the results in the PDL1 positive, and here we see that the graphs are further separated. The median OS is not yet reached, whereas it is 17 months in the the other placebo arm. So PDL1 positive patients, we see that they do well. Even without immunotherapy, there is a higher 3 months median OS, and if you give immunotherapy, then the median OS really goes up. This is the subgroup analysis for OS, and we see that most of the subgroups are benefiting, although the benefit is slightly higher in the elderly age group, more with the better PS, equally well whether the creatinine clearance is high or low. Slightly the graph is on the left side with the PDL1. So PDL1 positive patients have a higher benefit, both visceral and non-visceral benefit, but in the non-visceral metastasis, if the benefit is more, and if they are not having liver or lung metastasis, so they are benefit. So patients with bony metastasis and patients especially who have a low volume of disease, they are likely to have more benefit with immunotherapy avelumab maintenance. This is the PFS graph, and we see that the PFS again is significantly higher with the avelumab maintenance in both overall as well the PD-L1 positive population. Almost a 2 months gain, which is almost becomes more than double in the PD-L1 positive population, a PFS of 5.7 months with the avelumab maintenance. This is the PFS subgroup analysis, and here also again the PFS benefit is with most of the patients, both PDL1 positive and negative, both visceral and non-visceral metastasis, and both patients who have had good response to chemo or stable disease. So, what is the status of post progression treatment in these both arms? So we see that post avelumab maintenance, most of the patients received other treatments, and lesser patients received immunotherapy combinations. Whereas on the other arm, whether the patients received immunotherapy or not, and we can see that almost 44% patients received immunotherapy in the other arm, which did not receive avelumab maintenance, which says that this is a very fair data to compare, and avelumab bringing immunotherapy early in the patients irrespective of the PDL1 adds overall survival to the patients. So these are the response rates, and again the response rates are a bit better in the avelumab arm as compared to the placebo arm. Talking about toxicities, so there were no new safety signals that were identified. These are the usual toxicities that we see with immunotherapy. And if you look at the toxicities, so there is no toxicity which is more than 1% in grade 3. So there were no major grade 3, grade 4 toxicities. Any grade toxicity, hypothyroidism was the most common, so which tells that avelumab is a very safe drug. Use of corticosteroids was only in 9% patients in the avelumab arm, telling that the immune related adverse events are really less. Another important point why this can be a good maintenance treatment, because the toxicities are really less. Talking about other studies which had looked at the the PD-1 and the PD-L1 inhibitors. So this is the first line maintenance study, which is with pembrolizumab versus placebo, and they have also taken is a small phase 2 study of 108 patients. And here also we can see there is a PFS advantage with pembrolizumab and OS advantage with pembrolizumab, although the difference is sort of very less, and it is not statistically significant. So probably as compared to other immunotherapy agents, avelumab being a PD-1 inhibitor, probably has a higher difference, and has a better outcome. So pembrolizumab trial failed, but avelumab trial had, and also in the pembrolizumab trial there was no significant interaction in the PDL1 CPS more than equal to 10% on the treatment arm for PFS as well as OS. So pembrolizumab probably not such a good candidate for maintenance treatment. Talking about the first line study, so we have the atezolizumab study, and the first line IMvigor 210, and what we see is that a median OS of around 16.3 months when it is used in platinum ineligible patients. So almost equally good results as to platinum based treatment, and slightly better than that, with a median OS of 16 months. And we can see here again a flattening of the curve towards the end, so which says that probably some 20 to 30% patients are going to have a long-term outcome with immunotherapy here in atezolizumab also.
Sir, 2 minutes.
Also, pembrolizumab, similar data, single arm study, good results. The median OS, however, was around 11 to 12 months, with a 24 months OS of 31%. And here again, in the CPS more than 10% arm, those patients who have a high PDL1 expression, the median OS is 18.5%. So pembrolizumab, I think it is very important for these patients to have a good CPS score for the benefit. This is the combination study, atezolizumab plus chemotherapy versus atezolizumab monotherapy versus placebo plus platinum based chemotherapy. So these patients has both patients who were exposed to carboplatin or cisplatin, and we can see that so far as response rates are there, there was no difference in the immunotherapy arm versus the gem platinum arm. The response rates were very similar, 47% and 44%, and patients were all platinum eligible patients. So in platinum eligible patients, adding immunotherapy, there is no benefit in response rate. And this is the final PFS analysis. We can see that the PFS is not met. The hazard is 0.8, and the OS advantage again with the pre-specified OS, it was not met. The hazard is 0.8, although there is a numerical benefit of around 2 months in both OS as well as PFS. This is the analysis for single agent atezolizumab arm, and here also we see that there is a numerical advantage with atezolizumab arm in the PDL1 positive group as well as the overall population. However, the hazards were low and the pre-specified hazards were not met. So, in the PDL1 positive population, we can see that the maximum results are there with atezolizumab monotherapy. But again, in platinum eligible patients, the benefit is not really great, and the guidelines have also not included.
Sir,
This
2
is
minutes left,
plus,
sir.
yeah. This is the chemo plus IO results with pembro plus chemotherapy, similar to the atezolizumab line. And here also the OS was not significantly improved by addition of pembrolizumab to chemotherapy in platinum eligible patients. Talking about second line, so these are the results with the different immunotherapy agents, and we can see what we are reaching is around a 20% response rates, 5% CR rates, and a 12-month OS of around 40% to 50%, with the median OS ranging from 8 to 12 months. So and the median PFS of around 2 months, and probably in second line there isn't any sort of preference. Pembrolizumab being given a preferred by the NCCN only because it is a phase 3 data, whereas we have a phase 1 or a phase 2 data for the rest of the agents. So with this, I would like to thank Merck for giving me this opportunity, and I would like to thank the organizers. Thanks a lot.